Get out of that chair, Claire. Vanessa is sitting there tonight. She knows how to make my son feel wanted. My mother-in-law said it loudly enough for all 14 people in my dining room to hear. Then she laid my mother's blue silk scarf across the high-backed chair at the head of the table as if she were reserving a throne. The chair had belonged to my mother. So had the house. So had the pearl earrings hanging from Vanessa Cole's ears when she stepped through my front door on Christmas Eve. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The roast was resting on the kitchen island. Cinnamon and orange drifted from the pot of cider on the stove. White lights glowed around the windows of the old Charlotte house I had spent all afternoon preparing after a 16-hour hospital shift. My husband, Grant Holloway, stood beside the Christmas tree with one hand in his pocket. He did not defend me. He smiled. "Don't make that face," he said. "I told you Vanessa had nowhere else to go. You told me her engagement ended." Vanessa touched one pearl with the tip of a red fingernail. She was beautiful in the polished, deliberate way that made every room feel like an audience. Her cream dress was too elegant for a stranded friend and too intimate for another woman's family dinner. "It did," she said softly. "Some men can't handle a woman with ambition." I looked at the earrings. My mother had worn them at my medical school graduation, then left them to me with a note that said, "Wear these when you need to remember who you are. Those aren't Grant's to lend." Vanessa's smile tightened. "He said you never wear them. He said a woman who spends every night saving other people's babies doesn't have time for beautiful things." My brother-in-law lowered his eyes to his wine. Grant's sister, Melissa, stared at the tablecloth. My father-in-law studied the fire as if the answer to his son's cruelty might appear between the logs. Evelyn Holloway, my mother-in-law, gave a short laugh. "Claire, please don't turn Christmas into one of your hospital interrogations. For one night, try being a wife instead of a judge." The serving platter in my hands suddenly felt heavier than any newborn I had ever delivered. For 9 years, I had believed exhaustion was the price of building a good life. I was an obstetrician at Queen's Mercy Medical Center. Grant ran brand strategy for Carolina Crown Hospitality, a family-owned hotel company with properties across 4 states. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, and emergencies. He worked dinners, golf outings, launch parties, and what he called relationship management. Whenever I came home late, I apologized. Whenever he came home smelling like bourbon and someone else's perfume, he told me I was too tired to trust my own senses. Vanessa had been his best friend since college. I had fed her when she cried over breakups, loaned her a coat when an airline lost her luggage, and recommended her small marketing agency to a hospital foundation. She had toasted our anniversary in this very room. Now she was wearing my dead mother's pearls and standing close enough to my husband that their sleeves touched. 4 days earlier, Grant had announced that she would spend Christmas with us because her fiancé had abandoned her. When I asked why a devastated woman was still posting photos of wedding invitations and honeymoon dresses, he accused me of being jealous. Evelyn called me cold. By the end of the conversation, I had somehow apologized for questioning a lie they had all rehearsed. I might have done it again if a stranger had not stopped me in the hospital corridor 2 nights before Christmas. His name was Aaron Ruiz. His wife, Mia, had arrived at 11:40 p.m. with a placental abruption and a blood pressure that terrified everyone in the room. We moved fast. I delivered their son by emergency cesarean while the neonatal team worked beside me and Mia's. Blood loss climbed. For 73 minutes, there was no Grant, no Vanessa, no Christmas dinner, no hollow marriage. There was only a mother who needed to live and a child who needed to breathe. At 1:16 a.m., I walked into the waiting area and told Aaron that Mia was stable and their son was responding well. He folded forward, covered his face, and cried. Then he stood and gripped my forearm as if he needed proof that the floor was real. "Doctor, I don't know how to say this after what you just did for my family," he said. "But I think you deserve the truth." I assumed he meant something about Mia's medical history. "What truth?" "Your husband and Vanessa Cole aren't friends." The fluorescent lights hummed above us. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor chimed. "How do you know Vanessa?" "She's engaged to my cousin Noah." I stared at him. "Noah Price," Aaron continued. "Army Corps of Engineers. He's been supervising a flood control project near Wilmington for months. Their wedding is in June. Grant knows. They've met." I wanted to tell him he was confused. I wanted a clerical error, a second Vanessa Cole, a harmless explanation. Instead, Aaron unlocked his phone and showed me a photograph from a Thanksgiving dinner. Vanessa stood beside a tall man with tired gray eyes, her left hand spread across his chest so the diamond would catch the light. Grant had commented beneath it, "Can't wait to celebrate you too." My knees went weak, but my voice stayed level. "Why are you telling me now?" Aaron looked toward the intensive care doors where his wife lay recovering. "Because Vanessa called Mia last week. She was bragging that she'd finally be sitting in your place at Christmas." Mia told her it was disgusting. Vanessa laughed and said, "Your husband's family had already chosen sides." The sentence hurt more than the possibility of sex. An affair could happen in darkness. This was a ceremony. They had planned to humiliate me in my own home and call my reaction proof that I was unstable. I finished my notes, checked on Mia, and drove home at 2:07 a.m. Grant was asleep on the den sofa with the television glowing blue across his face. His phone rested open on his chest. I had never searched it before. Even then, I did not need to guess the passcode. He still used the date of our wedding. The first message from Vanessa read, "Christmas is going to be perfect. Your mother says she'll put me in the blue chair so Claire understands it's over." Grant had replied, "Let her cry. Everyone already thinks she's overworked and fragile." I scrolled with hands that did not feel like mine. There were photographs of Grant and Vanessa in a furnished apartment in South End. There were jokes about my call schedule. There were restaurant receipts, a reservation at a resort in St. Lucia, and a video of Vanessa trying on my mother's earrings while Grant laughed behind the camera. Then I found the invoices. Carolina Crown Hospitality had paid Vanessa's agency, V. Cole Creative, more than $860,000 over 10 months for campaigns that appeared to exist only as folders with expensive names. Some payments were approved by Grant. Others had been routed through a holiday promotion budget and broken into amounts just below the company's secondary review threshold. The rent on the apartment came from the same account. At 2:41 a.m., I discovered a draft email to a real estate broker. Grant described the Myers Park house as a marital asset likely to be available after Christmas. It was not a marital asset. My mother had bought it after my father died and left it to me before I married. Attached to the email was an unsigned authorization bearing a scanned version of my signature. My chest tightened as I read Grant's final note to the broker, "My wife is under extreme professional stress. If she resists, we may need to document that she lacks capacity to make sound financial decisions." I photographed everything. I forwarded the files to a new email account. Then I found Noah Price through Aaron's Thanksgiving post and sent him a single message, "I'm Claire Bennett Holloway. I think the woman you plan to marry is having an affair with my husband. I have evidence. I'm sorry." He did not answer for nearly 3 hours. I sat at the kitchen table listening to the refrigerator cycle on and off while Grant slept 2 rooms away. At 5:38 a.m., my phone vibrated. "I know who you are," Noah wrote. "I just didn't know how much you knew. I've been tracking money missing from an account Vanessa and I opened for our house. Send me everything. I'm requesting emergency leave. I can be in Charlotte Christmas night." Another message followed before I could respond. "Do not confront them yet. Grant is using Vanessa for something bigger than the affair. I think he plans to leave both of you holding the blame." That was when my grief changed shape. It did not disappear. It hardened around a question. How many people did my husband intend to destroy before he ran? I copied the files onto 3 drives. One went into my hospital locker. One went to my attorney, Dana Brooks, who called me before sunrise and told me not to sign, threaten, or reveal what I knew. The third stayed in the pocket of my winter coat. At 7 a.m., I showered. At 8 o'clock, I checked on Mia and her baby. At 10 o'clock, Grant brought me coffee and kissed my forehead as if he had not spent the night planning to steal my home. "You look terrible," he said. "Long night. Try to sleep before Christmas. Mom doesn't want tension." I almost laughed. Instead, I thanked him for the coffee. For the next 2 days, I moved through our marriage like a nurse checking a patient whose diagnosis had become terminal. I noticed every lie without correcting it. Grant claimed he had a lunch meeting when the apartment parking log showed his car downtown. Evelyn called to remind me that Vanessa was vulnerable. Melissa texted that I should avoid making Grant choose between his oldest friend and his wife. Even my place setting became a negotiation. Evelyn insisted the blue chair offered Vanessa better back support. By Christmas Eve, they mistook my silence for surrender. Now Grant pulled the blue chair closer to his own and rested his hand on its carved back. "After dinner, Claire and I have some paperwork to discuss. I'd appreciate it if everyone kept things calm." "What paperwork?" I asked. His smile never reached his eyes. "Household matters." "Does that include selling my mother's house?" The room shifted. Vanessa turned toward Grant too quickly. "You told her about that?" she whispered. He shot her a warning look. "This isn't the time for details." That brief exchange told me something useful. Vanessa knew about the affair, the gifts, and the apartment. She did not know everything Grant had planned. Evelyn tapped her fork against her glass. "If Claire insists on dragging property into Christmas, perhaps we should say what everyone knows. My son deserves a fresh start with a woman who is present, feminine, and grateful." "And that's why you invited his mistress into my house wearing my mother's jewelry?" Her mouth flattened. "Vanessa has always been like a daughter to us. You came later." Grant looked almost relieved. His mother had delivered the humiliation he lacked the courage to speak himself. I removed my apron, folded it over the back of a kitchen chair, and checked the antique clock in the hall. 3 minutes remained. They believed they had invited a lonely woman to replace me at Christmas. They did not know I had invited the man she was supposed to marry. During those 3 minutes, Grant poured wine and spoke as if I had already left the room. "We can make the transition dignified," he told his family. "Claire's schedule has made a conventional marriage impossible for years. Vanessa and I didn't choose the timing." "You chose Christmas," I said. "I chose honesty." Vanessa lowered her chin, performing sorrow for the table. "I never wanted to hurt you, Claire. You wore my mother's earrings by accident?" Color touched her cheeks. Grant said they were his family's. That was a lie, but not the lie that mattered most. I studied her expression. Under the confidence, I saw a flicker of uncertainty each time the house came up. Grant had made her believe she was entering a future he controlled. He had made me believe I was too exhausted to see him. Perhaps he had made everyone at that table believe a different story. The doorbell rang. I reached the foyer before Grant could stand. When I opened the door, Noah Price was on the porch beneath a cold December rain. He wore a dark wool coat over travel-creased clothes and carried a small canvas bag. He looked like a man who had spent 5 hours driving with a wound he could not close. On his left hand, his engagement ring caught the porch light. "Merry Christmas, Claire," he said. His voice was calm, but his jaw trembled once. "Is she here?" "She's sitting in my mother's chair." He closed his eyes for half a second. Then he followed me into the dining room. Vanessa's napkin slipped from her lap. Grant stood so abruptly that his knee struck the table, sending red wine across the white cloth. Evelyn gasped at the stain before she reacted to the man. "Noah," Vanessa whispered. "You told everyone our engagement ended," he said. "This isn't what it looks like." He looked from her dress to Grant's hand still resting on the back of her chair. Then his gaze settled on the pearls. "It looks like the woman I'm marrying in June is spending Christmas with another woman's husband, in that woman's home, wearing jewelry stolen from her mother." Vanessa turned to Grant, panic sharpening her face. "You said he knew." Grant's answer came instantly. "Don't be ridiculous. You told me he ended it." "No, you said we would explain after the holidays." "I said no such thing." They began abandoning each other before Noah had taken off his coat. He placed his bag by the wall and removed a thick gray folder. "Before you decide which lie to use, Claire needs to see this." Inside were bank statements from an account Noah and Vanessa had opened to build a house after their wedding. Noah had deposited $172,000 from years of savings and a small inheritance from his grandfather. Over 8 months, Vanessa had transferred almost all of it into V-Cole Creative. She told him the money secured production equipment and staffing for contracts that would support them both. Instead, the transfers overlapped with Grant's. Hotel invoices, the South End apartment, designer purchases, and payments to a consulting company registered in Delaware. "I believed I was investing in our future," Noah said. "When Claire contacted me, I checked every transfer. There was no equipment. No staff. The office address belongs to a mailbox store." Grant stepped forward. "Give me that." I took the folder first. He stopped. The room had always belonged to him emotionally. Even when the deed belonged to me. That night, for the first time, he seemed uncertain where he was allowed to stand. "This is a private business dispute," he said. "Vanessa's agency was a legitimate vendor. Noah doesn't understand marketing." "I understand an invoice for 600 hours of video production when no video exists," Noah replied. "I understand $46,000 billed for a photo shoot on a date Vanessa was with me in Wilmington." My father-in-law, Richard, finally looked directly at Grant. "Are those Carolina Crown invoices?" "Dad, don't get involved. My pension is tied to that company. Answer me." Grant's composure cracked at the edges. "Every corporation uses outside agencies. You're letting a jealous fiancé turn accounting into theater." "The company's audit director has the files," I said. His face emptied. "I had not emailed them myself. Dana had told me to avoid any claim that I was retaliating as a spouse, so Noah sent the invoices and supporting records at 4:30 that afternoon. He included a clean chain of custody, bank statements from his account, and metadata from Vanessa's shared drive. At 6:52, the audit director confirmed receipt and asked him not to alert Grant. "You contacted my employer?" Grant said. "I protected myself from a man forging my signature." Evelyn pushed back from the table. "Forging? What are you talking about?" "Your son prepared documents to sell my home. He also attached my name to payments I never approved." She looked at Grant, but only briefly. Habit was stronger than evidence. "Claire has been under terrible stress. We all know how medication and sleep deprivation can affect memory. I stared at her. There it was, the argument Grant had planted. I was a physician trusted to make life and death decisions at 3 a.m., but inside my marriage, my fatigue had been converted into incompetence. Which medication? I asked. Evelyn blinked. You said medication affects my memory. Name what I take. I don't know your private prescriptions. I don't have any. Grant told you I did, didn't he? Melissa made a small sound. I turned toward her. She was twisting her napkin so tightly around her fingers that the knuckles had gone white. What did he tell you? I asked. Grant answered for her. Leave my sister out of this. Melissa looked at him. You said Claire had started taking sedatives after night shifts. You said she mixed up bank accounts and accused you of things that didn't happen. I never said sedatives. You absolutely did. Her voice strengthened. You told me she might make a scene tonight and that we should record it if she became irrational. Every phone on the table suddenly looked like a weapon. I felt anger rise, clean and bright. Were you recording me? Melissa pulled her phone from her cardigan pocket and set it face down. Grant asked me to. I turned it on when Evelyn told you to move. I thought maybe he needed proof for a lawyer. Keep it, Dana had advised me that morning. If they record their own conduct in your home, don't interrupt. I met Melissa's frightened eyes. Don't delete anything. Grant reached for the phone. Richard caught his wrist. Sit down, his father said. The command was quiet, which made it more powerful. Grant pulled free but did not touch the phone again. Vanessa was no longer pretending to be heartbroken. She studied Grant as if he were a bridge beginning to collapse beneath her. You told them Claire was medicated? I told my family she wasn't well. You told me she had agreed to a separation. You knew she hadn't. You said the house would be yours because she couldn't manage it. The silence that followed revealed more than either of them intended. Vanessa had not merely expected Grant to leave me. She expected him to deliver my home as part of the reward. Noah removed his engagement ring and placed it on the table beside her plate. I spent 11 months wondering why you kept postponing our venue deposit. Now I know. You weren't planning one future. You were bidding on whichever man could finance the better one. Vanessa's eyes filled. Noah, please. Grant said his marriage was already over. He said Claire cared more about the hospital than him. So you took my savings? The agency was supposed to make it back. So you wore her mother's jewelry? That was Grant's idea. Everything was Grant's idea once you got caught. She flinched. For the first time that evening, I felt something other than hatred toward her. It was not sympathy. It was recognition. Grant had built a world in which every woman near him was responsible for proving his innocence. I had done it by apologizing for my work. Vanessa had done it by accepting his gifts. Evelyn had done it for his entire life. Grant poured himself more wine despite the spill soaking the tablecloth. This is absurd. Claire is never home. I ate dinner alone, went to events alone, made excuses for her every holiday. Vanessa noticed me. That's the crime everyone is so eager to punish. You weren't alone, I said. You were married to a woman working to keep mothers alive. You always say it that way, like your job makes every selfish choice noble. My job didn't put your hand in company accounts. Those payments built campaigns that benefited hundreds of employees. Noah opened the folder to a spreadsheet. Name one employee who worked on them. Grant ignored him. He focused on me, using the intimate, reasonable tone that had once made me doubt my own anger. Claire, you're upset. I understand that. Let's send everyone home and discuss this privately. You brought your affair to a table full of witnesses. Because you forced me. You refused to see how unhappy I was. You could have asked for a divorce. And let you hide my share of this house? There it was, spoken without disguise. Richard released a slow breath. The house was Marion's before the marriage. Grant looked at him. Claire and I improved it together. Claire paid for the renovation, Richard said. You borrowed $60,000 from me for your contribution and never repaid it. Evelyn turned sharply. What loan? Grant's father did not look away from his son. The one he said was for structural work. I found out last month that Claire's account covered the contractor. That was the first reversal Grant had not anticipated. His father had not been silent because he approved. He had been watching his son and hoping the numbers would eventually make sense. You investigated me? Grant said. I asked for a receipt. You had no right. It was my money. Grant laughed once, bitterly. So now everyone is perfect except me. My phone vibrated against the table. The message came from Priya Shah, Carolina Crown's audit director. She had found a payment request scheduled for December 26th. It was larger than the others, $1.4 million to a newly created vendor. The request had passed the first approval stage under an executive authorization that did not belong to Grant. It belonged to me. Attached was a copy of my medical license, my driver's license, and an electronic signature certificate created 6 days earlier from our home internet address. I looked at the man who had been my husband. You weren't just stealing from your company. He saw the screen and went pale. You were preparing to make me look like the thief. The accusation did not explode through the room. It settled over us like snow, silent and irreversible. Every person at the table looked at Grant without the mask he had worn for them. He recovered quickly. Cowards often do when outrage is their last available costume. That's insane, he shouted. Claire has access to my computer. She could have created those documents herself. Vanessa stopped crying. Slowly, she reached into her purse and removed her phone. No, she said. You sent them to me. Grant turned toward her. Be careful. The threat was quiet, but everyone heard it. Vanessa unlocked her phone with shaking fingers. You said Claire's authorization was insurance. You said if the hotel company questioned the agency, we could show that she had reviewed the campaign because she served on the hospital foundation. You misunderstood. I asked why a doctor would approve hotel advertising. You told me nobody would look closely once they heard she was exhausted and angry about an affair. Grant took 2 steps around the table. Noah moved between them. Don't come near her, he said. Vanessa looked up at the man she had betrayed. Shame passed across her face, followed by something harder. I have the audio. She tapped the screen. Grant's voice filled my dining room, patient and affectionate. We use Claire's authorization if the review gets serious. The stressed doctor moved the money. No jury is going to believe a hysterical wife who discovers an affair and suddenly claims her signature was stolen. In the recording, Vanessa laughed nervously. What if she gets a lawyer? Then we show them the medication notes and the messages from my family. Mom will say she's been confused for months. By the time anyone untangles it, we'll be gone. The audio ended. Evelyn pressed a hand to her chest. Grant, tell me that isn't you. I looked at her. You were willing to call me unstable when the shame belonged to me. I never agreed to accuse you of stealing. You agreed to record me. You agreed to tell people I took medication I've never used. You agreed to help him make my pain look like illness. She lowered her eyes. He said he needed protection. From what? Richard asked. A woman whose house he was trying to take. Evelyn opened her mouth, but no defense came. The woman who had spent 9 years deciding which of my feelings were acceptable suddenly had no authority left to distribute. Vanessa scrolled through her messages. There's more. Grant lunged for the phone. Noah blocked him with one arm, and Richard stepped to his son's other side. For a moment, Grant stood trapped between the father whose money he had taken and the fiancée whose future he had financed with lies. You all need to stop, Grant said. Anything on that phone involves privileged company information. You don't get to invoke privacy now, I replied. Vanessa opened an email dated December 22. Grant had written that after the $1.4 million transfer cleared, he would travel alone to Panama City to straighten out the international accounts. Vanessa was instructed to remain in Charlotte. If investigators contacted her, she was to admit that V. Cole Creative had submitted inflated invoices without Grant's knowledge. He promised to hire an attorney for her after the situation cooled. At the bottom, beneath a chain of logistical notes, he had written, Claire will be too busy defending the signature to come after either of us. Vanessa read the message twice. You said we were leaving together on December 28. Grant shrugged with forced contempt. Plans change. You were going to abandon me. Don't act innocent. You stole from Noah and climbed into my marriage because you wanted a better address. You told me the money was yours. And you believed it because believing was profitable. His cruelty landed differently now. It was no longer directed at the wife he had trained everyone to dismiss. It struck the woman who had helped him, and she held the evidence he needed destroyed. Vanessa wiped her cheeks. I'll give the audit director every password, every invoice, and every message. You'll incriminate yourself. Probably. Her voice shook, but she did not retreat. I would rather face what I did than spend another hour protecting you. She glanced at me. I'm not doing this because I deserve forgiveness. I don't. I sat in your chair because I wanted you to feel erased. I believed winning him meant I had beaten you. I didn't understand that he was building an exit out of both our bodies. I could have comforted her. The old version of me would have, because I had confused kindness with the duty to absorb everyone else's consequences. Instead, I held out my hand. The earrings. Vanessa removed them. Without the pearls, she looked younger and much less certain. She placed them in my palm one at a time. My mother wore these when I became a doctor, I said. You don't get to use them as a costume in the story he told about me. I'm sorry. You should be. I closed my fingers around the pearls and turned to Grant. You need to leave. He laughed, but desperation made the sound thin. You think you can evict me during dinner? Your bags are in the foyer. His smile vanished. While he had showered that afternoon, Dana's assistant and I had packed his clothes, medication, passport, and work laptop under video. We inventoried every item and left anything potentially belonging to Carolina Crown untouched. Dana had filed for an emergency protective order based on identity theft, financial abuse, and Grant's plan to declare me incapacitated. A process server waited 2 houses away in case he refused to accept the petition. You went into my things, he demanded. The way you went into my jewelry box. I live here. I opened the sideboard drawer and removed the deed. My mother had purchased the house 13 years before my marriage and transferred it to a trust naming me as sole beneficiary. Grant had signed a premarital acknowledgement of the separate property because the bank required it when we refinanced the roof. Your attorney can discuss occupancy with mine, I said. Tonight, you leave my dining room. Evelyn stood. Claire, whatever he did, throwing him into the street on Christmas is cruel. He has a furnished apartment. Richard looked at his wife. Paid for with stolen money. Then he can stay with us. No, Richard said. That single word seemed to age her. Grant stared at his father. You would choose her? This isn't a contest between my son and his wife. It's a decision between helping you avoid consequences and refusing to help. Richard picked up his coat. I'll drive you to a hotel. Do not confuse that with support. You think you're righteous? Grant snapped. You spent my childhood working. Mom made excuses for you every night. Richard's face tightened. And I apologized to my family without stealing their identities. Melissa slid her phone toward me. The recording is still running. I'll send the original to your lawyer. Her cheeks were wet. I am so sorry, Claire. For tonight or for all the times you helped him make me doubt myself? She swallowed. Both. Then tell the truth when someone asks. I will. Grant looked around the room for a loyal face. His brother pretended to inspect the wine stain. 2 aunts whispered near the doorway. Evelyn was crying, but even she did not step between him and the foyer. Fine, he said. Enjoy the performance. When Carolina Crown realizes Claire manufactured this to punish me for leaving, every one of you will look stupid. He walked toward me until less than a foot separated us. For years, he had used closeness as pressure. He would lower his voice, soften his face, and make me feel unreasonable for needing space. You don't know what you started, he murmured. No, Grant. You don't know what I finished noticing. His eyes shifted to the coat pocket containing my drive. I saw the decision form a second before he reached for it. I stepped back. Noah caught his shoulder. Grant swung his arm, knocking a framed photograph from the console. Glass shattered across the floor. The process server entered through the still-open front door with an off-duty sheriff's deputy Dana had arranged to be nearby. Grant froze. Mr. Holloway, the server said, these documents are for you. The deputy did not touch him. He did not need to. The sight of a uniform transformed Grant's rage into calculation. My wife is having some kind of episode, he said. Melissa held up her phone. No, she isn't. It was the second reversal that mattered in a different way. Melissa had begun recording to help her brother depict me as unstable. Now the same uninterrupted video showed Grant discussing my house, reacting to the forged signature, threatening Vanessa, reaching into my coat, and breaking the photograph. Grant accepted the papers. Richard carried one suitcase. He carried the other himself. At the door, he looked back toward the dining room. Vanessa, come with me. She shook her head. Mom? Evelyn covered her mouth. For once, nobody followed him. When the door closed, the house became so quiet that I heard cider bubbling in the kitchen. The roast had gone cold. Red wine spread beneath plates no one had touched. My family by marriage stood inside my mother's house like guests who had awakened after the building changed ownership. Noah picked up his ring from the table. He did not offer it to Vanessa. I'll send your personal things to your sister's apartment, he said. My lawyer will contact you about the account. She nodded. I'll cooperate. Cooperation isn't the same as making it right. I know. He looked at me. I'm sorry this happened here. I'm sorry it happened to you too. We lost the people we thought we loved. I opened my hand and looked at the pearls. Maybe we lost the stories they told us. Noah left first. Vanessa waited for a rideshare in the foyer, wrapped in a coat over her cream dress. She seemed to want to say more, but nothing she could offer belonged to me. When the car arrived, she walked out without asking for Grant's location. Richard asked whether I wanted him to stay. I said no. Melissa hugged herself rather than reaching for me. Evelyn remained in the blue chair, staring at the scarf she had placed there. I thought I was protecting my son, she said. You were protecting him from the discomfort of being known. I didn't know about the money. You knew he brought another woman into my home to humiliate me. Tears slid down her face. I told myself your marriage had already ended. Because he said so? Because believing him meant I didn't have to admit what kind of man I raised. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I lifted my mother's scarf from the chair and folded it. You should go. She did. After the final card disappeared, I locked the door. I gathered the broken glass, removed Vanessa's plate, and placed the pearls at the head of the table. Then I turned off the Christmas music. I did not eat. I lit one candle and sat in the chair Evelyn had tried to give away. For an hour, I let myself cry without diagnosing the tears, apologizing for their volume, or wondering who might use them against me. At 11:57 p.m., my hospital called. Mia Ruiz's blood pressure had risen, and the covering physician wanted my opinion. I went upstairs, changed into scrubs, and drove through the rain. People later asked how I could work after that dinner. The answer was simple. Grant had spent years convincing me that my ability to care for others made me deficient as a wife. I refused to let his betrayal contaminate the truest thing about me. Mia stabilized before dawn. Her son slept beneath a knitted green cap in the neonatal unit. Aaron met me by the elevators with a paper cup of coffee. Noah texted me, he said. Are you all right? No, it was the first time I answered that question honestly. He nodded. Mia says being not all right is allowed. Tell her she's an excellent doctor. She says you're the doctor. She's just the woman who knows Vanessa talks too much. Despite everything, I laughed. The sound surprised me. The laughter did not mean the pain was over. By 9 o'clock Christmas morning, I had 43 missed calls. Grant left messages that moved through every strategy he had used during our marriage. First came reason, we should discuss this privately before outsiders misunderstand. Then affection, I know you're hurt, but 9 years cannot disappear in one night. Then blame, you ambushed me in front of my family. Finally, fear disguised as anger, if you give those files to anyone else, you'll destroy both our lives. I saved every message and answered none. Dana met me at her office on December 26th. She was 52, silver-haired, and incapable of being impressed by expensive suits or wounded male pride. She reviewed Melissa's recording, the forged certificate, and the property email. Then she looked over her glasses at me. He did not improvise this, she said. The incapacity story is older than the affair reveal. We need to find out where he used it. That possibility had not occurred to me. I had been focused on the house and the invoices. Dana requested my credit reports, medical record access logs, insurance changes, bank authorizations, and every document Grant had submitted using my name. By the afternoon, Carolina Crown suspended him. Priya called from a conference room with company counsel present. She confirmed that Vanessa had surrendered access to the agency accounts and that the December 26th transfer had been stopped 11 minutes before release. If it had cleared, the money would have moved through the Delaware consultant to an account in Panama. Your notice prevented the loss, Priya told me. Noah's records did, I said. Both mattered. But there's something you should prepare for. Grant created a file about you inside the vendor review system. It contains emails that appear to come from your hospital address. My stomach tightened. What do they say? They describe financial problems, confusion after overnight shifts, and a request for cash in exchange for connecting V. Cole Creative to hospital executives. I never sent them. We know at least 2 were uploaded from Grant's employee account. Our forensic team is tracing the rest. That was the third major reversal. Grant had not planned to blame me only if the audit discovered the final transfer. He had been constructing a false history for months. The jokes about my exhaustion, the questions to my family about whether I seemed forgetful, and the stories about non-existent medication were not casual cruelty. They were witness preparation. Dana noticed my hands shaking. This is frightening, she said, but a fabricated trail leaves its own trail. I wanted to believe her. Yet for the next 3 weeks, every email notification made my pulse race. Investigators interviewed me twice. I sat in a plain room explaining that I had never served on the hotel company's marketing committee, never authorized Vanessa's agency, and never met the Delaware consultant. I handed over shift schedules showing I was in surgery when several approvals occurred. Queen's Mercy preserved server logs proving the emails had not originated from my account. Grant hired a criminal defense attorney and a public relations consultant. He told mutual friends that our divorce was an unfortunate collision of infidelity and Claire's emotional burnout. He never denied the affair. He treated it like a small confession that might make the larger accusations seem vindictive. People who had ignored me for years suddenly sent careful messages. I don't want to take sides, but I hope you both heal. I learned to answer, identity theft is not a side. On January 3rd, He appeared at my front door shortly after sunset. The protective order barred threats and financial contact but permitted him to arrange retrieval of remaining belongings through counsel. He had no appointment. The camera above the porch recorded him pressing the bell 8 times. I spoke through the closed door. Leave. Claire, please. I lost my job. Vanessa turned over everything. Dad froze the family account. I need you to tell the company those signatures could have been an administrative mistake. Were the pearls an administrative mistake? I was confused. No. You were comfortable while everyone around you made me feel small. We can go to therapy. We can save something. The only thing I'm saving is my peace. He placed his palm against the door. You don't mean that. For years, he had told me what I meant whenever my meaning inconvenienced him. I do. I called the non-emergency line and told him officers were on the way. He left before they arrived. I watched his car disappear through the camera, then stood in the quiet hallway with my hand over my heart. I expected triumph. I felt space. The divorce moved faster than Grant wanted and slower than I did. He challenged the trust holding the house, then withdrew after Dana produced his signed acknowledgement. And Richard's testimony about the false renovation loan. He demanded spousal support because his income had disappeared. The judge asked why it disappeared. His attorney requested a recess. Evelyn sent 6 letters. In the first 4, she explained. She described Grant as sensitive, lonely, pressured by a demanding career and a wife whose work consumed her. I returned them unopened after Dana scanned them. The 5th letter was different. Evelyn admitted that Grant had asked her 7 months earlier to write down examples of my cognitive decline. She had created a list. I forgot a serving spoon at Easter, arrived late to Melissa's birthday after an emergency delivery, and once called Richard by my father's name while half asleep. Grant had submitted that list to an insurance broker while exploring a policy that would give him authority over my finances if I became impaired. Evelyn included a copy. Her 6th letter contained one sentence: I understand now that every excuse I made for him became a tool he used against you. I did not forgive her. I did send the document to Dana. Melissa did more than apologize. She gave investigators the original Christmas recording, messages in which Grant coached her to describe me as erratic, and a voicemail asking her to provoke me at dinner if I stayed calm. Her cooperation cost her relationship with her brother and, for a time, with her mother. She told me she accepted that. Vanessa pleaded guilty to participating in the invoice scheme. Her attorney negotiated cooperation in exchange for consideration at sentencing. She supplied cloud backups showing that Grant had created V. Cole Creative's largest false campaigns, selected the billing amounts, and controlled the Delaware company. She also returned $94,000 in remaining funds and surrendered purchases bought through the agency. Noah recovered only a portion of his savings. He moved out of the apartment they had chosen together and delayed buying a home. Once, in early spring, he emailed me a photograph of a small rental near the Cape Fear River. On the porch sat the canvas bag he had carried into my Christmas dinner. Starting over smaller, he wrote. Still better than living inside a lie. I replied, smaller can be honest. Grant's greatest mistake was believing Vanessa would remain loyal because guilt made her weak. In fact, guilt made her meticulous. She remembered dates. She preserved voice messages. She had photographed wire instructions because she was afraid he would deny promising her a life abroad. The evidence did not erase her choices, but it stopped him from placing every choice on us. In May, a federal grand jury indicted Grant on wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and conspiracy charges. The state brought additional charges related to the attempted property documents. Carolina Crown's insurer recovered much of the stolen money, and the company publicly cleared me of involvement after an independent forensic review. Priya invited me to a meeting at the hotel headquarters to receive the written findings. The building's lobby rose 3 stories around a fountain, all polished stone and controlled light. I remembered attending Grant's launch parties there, standing at his side while he introduced me as the brilliant doctor who is never home. People always laughed. I had laughed too. Priya handed me a letter stating that no evidence connected me to the fraud and that my identity had been used without authorization. I wish we had noticed earlier, she said. So do I. He was good at making each irregularity look small. That sentence stayed with me. Grant had built his power out of small things: a joke about my schedule, a pearl earring borrowed without permission, a concerned call to his sister, a forged email surrounded by authentic ones. No single act looked like a cage. Together they had almost closed around me. The hearing where he entered his plea took place 6 months after Christmas. Grant wore a navy suit and looked thinner. He did not turn toward me until the prosecutor described the plan to frame an innocent spouse whose professional exhaustion had been deliberately mischaracterized as mental impairment. Then he looked back. There was no apology in his face. There was disbelief. He still could not understand how the woman he had defined as absent had become the witness whose presence he could not escape. He accepted a plea agreement after the forensic evidence linked his devices to the false certificates and overseas account. The judge imposed a prison sentence, restitution, and supervised release. Vanessa received a shorter sentence with home confinement followed by probation because of her cooperation, repayment, and lack of prior offenses. She lost her agency, her engagement, and the future she had tried to steal from someone else. Justice was less cinematic than Christmas dinner. There was no music, no perfect speech, no sudden cheer from the courtroom. There were forms, dates, legal terms, and the soft scrape of chairs. Yet when the marshal led Grant through a side door, my lungs expanded as if I had been breathing shallowly for years. Outside, Evelyn waited near the courthouse steps. She had not attended the hearing with me. She stood alone, clutching her handbag with both hands. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "Good." She flinched but nodded. "I wanted you to know I sold the lake condo. Richard and I used my share to repay the $60,000 Grant took and to cover some of Noah's loss. Money doesn't undo what happened. I know. And repayment doesn't purchase access to me. I know that too." She looked older than she had on Christmas Eve, but not smaller. Consequences are not the same as humiliation. She was finally standing inside the truth without asking me to make it comfortable. "Why did you put Vanessa in my mother's chair?" I asked. Evelyn's eyes filled. "Because Grant said if we made the separation feel final, you would sign the house papers without a fight. And because some ugly part of me resented that you had a life he couldn't control." The honesty hurt, but it released me from searching for a kinder explanation. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Please don't contact me again." She respected that boundary. The months after the case were not perfect. Healing did not arrive like a verdict. Some nights, the smell of cinnamon returned me to the dining room so completely that I could hear Evelyn's fork touch the glass. Some mornings, I woke convinced I had forgotten an appointment, a document, or a conversation. Grant's campaign against my memory had survived longer inside me than his presence in the house. I began therapy with a woman named Dr. Lena Morris, who asked why I trusted my judgment with hemorrhaging patients but not with my own pain. "Because patients don't tell me loving them requires doubting myself," I answered. "Then perhaps your work was never the obstacle to intimacy. Perhaps it was the place where reality remained reality." I wrote that sentence on an index card and kept it beside my bed. I repainted the kitchen cream, replaced the dining room rug, and had the blue chair repaired where Grant's knee had split one joint beneath the table. I considered selling it. Instead, I moved it near the east window and used it every Sunday morning to drink coffee. An object did not have to remain loyal to the worst thing that happened around it. In April, Mia and Aaron brought their son to the hospital's maternal health fundraiser. He had round cheeks, serious brown eyes, and a green bow tie. Mia hugged me carefully, then handed me a small potted magnolia. "Aaron says you saved 3 people that night," she said. "You and your son make 2. I wasn't talking only about us." Tied to the pot was a note: "Thank you for caring for lives even while yours was hurting." I placed the magnolia by my front steps. By summer, it had produced 2 white blossoms. Richard wrote once to apologize for staying silent at dinner until the evidence became impossible to ignore. He did not ask me to absolve him. Melissa sent a birthday card with no emotional demand inside it. I learned that distance could coexist with the recognition that people were trying to become better. I did not need to supervise their growth. At work, I accepted a leadership role in a new maternal emergency program. Grant had mocked my ambition as abandonment, so part of me feared the promotion would prove him right. Then I imagined declining something meaningful to satisfy a man no longer in my life. I signed the contract. The next Christmas Eve arrived with clear skies and a cold wind. My father, my 2 sisters, Dana, Dr. Morris, and 3 colleagues gathered in my dining room. Aaron and Mia stopped by early with their son, who pulled a ribbon from the tree and laughed as if he had discovered treasure. I served roast beef, sweet potatoes, green beans, and my mother's orange cranberry cake. There were no place cards. No chair represented ownership. One seat remained empty because a nurse from my department had been called into an emergency and might arrive later. Before the toast, I went upstairs and opened the small velvet box on my dresser. The pearls rested against blue fabric. I had not worn them since the hearing. My younger sister fastened them for me and smiled at our reflection. "They look exactly the way I remember them on Mom." I touched one pearl. "Now they're back where they belong." At the table, my father lifted his glass. "To Claire, who had a year she should never have been asked to survive." I shook my head. "Not to surviving." Everyone waited. Last Christmas, I thought losing my marriage meant losing my home. I thought an empty chair proved someone had left me. This year, I learned a home begins wherever nobody requires you to doubt your own worth. Glasses touched. Outside, distant fireworks broke over the city. Inside, the laughter was clean. No phones were hidden beneath napkins. No one watched my face for evidence that I was difficult to love. Halfway through dinner, the front door opened. And my colleague rushed in, still wearing scrubs beneath her coat. The empty chair received her without ceremony. Someone passed the potatoes. Someone else poured cider. Life continued, not as a performance of completeness but as an invitation. Grant had tried to give my Christmas, my mother's chair, my identity, and my future to another woman. He believed my long hours had made me weak, that kindness had made me easy to frame, and that silence meant I had surrendered. All he truly did was force me to see what I had been abandoning in order to hold him together. My own life. When the final guest left, I stood alone in the dining room. The blue chair caught the glow of the tree. I removed the pearls and held them in my palm, remembering my mother's note. Wear these when you need to remember who you are. For the first time, I understood that she had never been talking about jewelry.